Hello, everyone. Welcome to webinar number 6, How to Host a Virtual Event. My name is Beth Crane, and I'm your host for our 6th and final webinar in our series on the Virtual Events
How to host
Toolkit.
a virtual event.
We're all familiar with the role of the event coordinator at the ISU competition. We can see them sitting beside and directing the announcer, and some of you might know that they've got this nonverbal signal that goes like this to say the announcer goes, the next skater is. They've got headphones on and they're connecting to the broadcasting, so they know what's happening as far as broadcasting is going. They've got a monitor in front of them so they can see the results coming in. They've got a walkie-talkie, so they're connecting or able to connect to ST Sports Services, the ref, the technical panel, technical delegate, music. Basically, they're running the whole show, and we can see them if we know where they're sitting. I remember being at my first virtual event and thinking, okay, there is someone I cannot see who is organizing and coordinating all these tasks and all these people, but they're doing it virtually. And I thought, who is that person and what are they doing? And I found out it's the host. And during the past year, I've also learned a little bit more about hosting a virtual event. And today we have Elena Iñiguez de Heredia, and she's going to guide us through how to host a virtual event. Elena has taken all her experience in event management and her knowledge as a former figure skater and applied them to the virtual setting in order to host virtual events. So Elena, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Beth. I remember that time you were asking about who was the person behind the scenes in this virtual event. So I'm glad that you did, because that's how we met and that's how we ended up creating this toolkit and teaching the rest of the skating community how to host their own virtual events. And that's the idea about today. Webinar 6 is covering section 4 of the virtual events toolkit. And we're gonna talk about what's the role of the host and how to organize these types of virtual events. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the role of the host, as I mentioned. I'm going to explain also what are the main different types of virtual events that we can have for figure skating. I'm going to tell you what do you need for hosting these events. And I'm going to go in detail over the 4 phases of the organization of an event: the design, the plan, the execution, and the closing. I'm going to wrap up with some advice for organizers, and then we're going to have time for questions. And let me remind you that if you have any questions during the presentation, you're welcome to type them in the chat and Beth will bring them to me. Okay. So let's start about talking about the role of the host. Who is this person and what they do? So like Beth said during the introduction, the host on virtual events takes the role of the event coordinator. So what we do is we provide participants with all they need to perform their tasks during the event. We are the ones who prepare everything before the event, and we manage the coordination and the behind the scenes production during the event. So as an event manager, I would recommend that you just have to migrate these skills that you probably already have from your experience in coordinating real events at the rink, just migrate them to the virtual format. The process is very similar, just we need to adapt to this different format, and I'm gonna share with you my experience on how to do that. So let me explain what are the different types of virtual events that I'm gonna cover today. And I selected 2 main categories of virtual events. The first one is having a live event. What does it mean? It means having a camera connected from the rink and streaming live skating video signal for officials to watch remotely from their homes. Last week in webinar 5, we covered how to do this connection, how to connect a camera at the rink. We had our colleague Luca Demate explaining us how to do that. So if we can have that connection on Zoom or on an HD streaming site, we can have a virtual event where officials can watch the skating in real time and officiate, and we can use the online scoring system that we explained in webinar 4, and we can have maybe a domestic competition or a element only challenge or something like that. So this type of event can also be streamed live for the audience at the same time directly from Zoom. So I know this sounds complex, and yes, it is a bit complex. I know that we started webinar 1 with how to host a meeting. So that was the base of the recipe, and we keep adding things like the technical panel, the scoring system, the rink recording, and now we are explaining how to host a very complex type of virtual event. But you can take the pieces that you consider and create your own event according to your needs. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a little video of how does a live event looks like. Yeah, this is an example that we hosted last year. So in real time, we were connected from 28 different locations around the world. This was a spins only challenge, and we had spinners off the ice from Mexico, as you can see in the screen right now. And we were also connected in 2 different rinks. We used the centers of excellence as an example.
And the next skater on the ice representing Austria will be Maurizio Zandron.
So you can see this is the camera that was connected at the centers of excellence in Bergamo, Italy. And we had another one in Champéry.
Here we go. Yeah. So we've got an entry.
We also had commentators that
We got reverse
helped us make this streaming entertaining for the audience, because as you can see, this was streamed live on Facebook. So that is how a live event looks like. And the other type of virtual event that I'm going to cover today is when we have an event with submitted videos. That's another option. Instead of connecting a camera live from the rink, you can ask your skaters to record their sums and submit those videos. So officials can watch those videos together at the same time, or you can set a time frame for them to watch them on their own. This type of event is more relaxed from the host point of view, because you can host different sessions, one with the technical panel, one with the judges. You can communicate with them directly on the Zoom meeting. And since this event cannot be streamed live directly from Zoom, because the videos are hosted on a separate platform, you can have that sort of more relaxed atmosphere instead of taking care of the communications and the clean streaming and all that that we did for the live event. So those are the main types of virtual events I'm going to cover today, and I'm going to explain the difference between them when I go over the details of the phases of organization. Okay. So what do you need to host these virtual events? Well, first you need a Zoom account to host the session. And Zoom has a free version that allows you to host meetings for 40 minutes. And it also has a very affordable paid version that allows you to host unlimited time meetings. So I would recommend that if you can pay for that, that's the one that will make you the most experience for your virtual events. You also need Google Docs or Google Drive for creating collaborative documents. And I would recommend that you use this type of collaborative live documents, because it will allow you to always share the most updated version with the participants. And also you can have your team collaborate on the documents easier. So these are only suggestions. I know that there are other apps like Zoom or Google Docs that do the same. So you will feel free to choose whatever works for you and according to the needs that you have and where you are in the world. I know that there are some restrictions in some countries, but this is what we used for the virtual events that we hosted this past year. You will also need a camera at the rink or the skating videos in case of submitted videos events. And that we covered we cover the details on how to do that on webinar 5. You will also need the remote officials, the technical panel, and the judges. And you will also need the online scoring system that we explained in webinar 4. Of course, you also need human resources. You need your team. So I'm going to discuss a little bit about the people that you need to gather for these virtual events. So if you're hosting a live event connected from the rink, you need a team of event organizers. And I recommend that you have at least 2 people, because that will allow you to have a host and a co-host on Zoom to help you with the production task behind the scenes. You would need a data coordinator to download and manage the online scoring system. You will also need a rink coordinator, and that's the person who is at the rink connecting the camera and managing the connection through Zoom. So you will have to work as a team together with these 2 people. And then you have the officials. You need remote judges, and you need a remote technical panel. And for the technical panel, it's important that you also have a video replay operator, because you will need that for reviews. And since if you decide to stream this event live for the public, for the audience, I would recommend that you have a second video replay operator to show reviews in the main room, and maybe commentators or even a master of ceremonies to guide the event and make it more entertaining for the audience, like the example I showed you in the video before. If you decide to host an event with submitted videos, it's a little bit simpler. You still need 2 people as event organizers for host and co-host. You also need the data coordinator for the online scoring system, and you need the judges, and you need the technical panel. What you don't need here is a video replay operator, because every official watches the video on their own, so they can control their own replays, okay? So let's go in detail over the 4 phases of event organization. And I know that event managers here will be familiar with these phases. We have first the design phase. Those are the first steps on how to define the characteristics of your event and initiate the process of organization. Once we decide what to organize, we start with the planning phase, and that covers everything that needs to be done before the event. Once the day of the event arrives, that's the execution phase. And we're going to talk about what's the role of the host during the execution of the events specifically. And after the event, we also have the closing phase, which covers all the post-event tasks that organizers need to take care of, okay? So let's start with the design phase. Define the characteristics based on the purpose of your event. So I would recommend that you ask yourself the questions. What are we offering the skaters? Are we hosting a competition? Is it going to be elements only or full programs? Are we adding feedback sessions in the end? Do we have a trial judging group? All these questions will allow you to decide what are the characteristics that you will use for your event, and they will also help you decide if you will choose between a live event or an event with submitted videos. So once you have that decided, you can get your team together, and you can set the dates and the times, not only for the day of the event, but also for the practice sessions. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Practice sessions and rehearsals are really, really important, like in any event, but for virtual events, a little bit more. Once you have the dates and times for all the sessions decided, you can invite the officials. And I would recommend that you also create a Drive folder for all these documents, to have them in a Drive folder shared with the organizer team. And it's easy to share them with officials as well. So before we move on to the planning phase, Beth, do you have any questions in the chat?
Yeah, there's 2 questions that we have. And one is, the video you shared on Zoom was a little jumpy. So do you normally share videos on Zoom, or how do you get around this?
Yeah, we discovered that sharing videos on Zoom usually that's what happens. Participants watching on Zoom get the videos a little bit jumpy, and it's okay when you're showing a video like I did to show an example, but if you're trying to judge a skating performance, it gets difficult because you cannot see the details of the skating. So actually, that's why we decided to have the videos with the events with submitted videos on a separate platform. And that's why we don't share the videos directly on Zoom, because we tried it, and at least until now, it's not the best way for judges to have the best quality of the videos. Yeah.
Okay, and a follow-up question. Is live streaming usually quite jumpy, or is it, you know, just like you would normally see at a rink? So when you've done live streaming events.
The live streaming is, we didn't have any problems with jumpy videos with live streaming. Of course, it will depend on the resolution and the quality of resolution of the camera you're using at the rink. And I would invite you to check webinar 5. Well, Luca talks about that in detail. But yes, since the camera is connected directly on Zoom, the quality of the video is almost perfect. So we didn't have any problems with that because of that.
Okay, and a different question now. You talked about human resources. Are the event organizers the same as the co-host and the host? Are they one and the same person usually?
Yeah, why I recommend that there are at least 2 people is because one can make sure that one can take over the production task, you know, spotlighting cameras, muting microphones, and running all things like you just, like you said, we do like this in real events. Well, we do it like that on virtual events. But then you also need someone to monitor the whole session and to be available to solve any problems that might happen. So yes, it is possible to do it with only one person, but I would strongly recommend that you have 2, because that will allow you to have more space and be more prepared to solve any problems or issues that might come up during the event.
Okay, and there's one other question on the chat from Jeroen, and here's his question. In the case of submitted videos, for instance, let's say you're selecting who's going to a championship or competition, where judges work offline individually, could you just appoint one event coordinator to enter elements from the tech panel in the Zoom session and collect the judges' scores one by one offline?
Sure, that's another way of doing it. Actually, there are endless possibilities on how to host virtual events, and I know that many of you have done different versions in your own countries. I only have 1 hour to cover this webinar, so if I mention all of them, we would be here forever. That's why I selected these. But yeah, in the case of letting the officials judge, not hosting a session, but letting them judge on their own time, you can deal with the results like that. Yes, of course.
Okay, good. Now let me just check with Sally. Sally, do you have any questions that have come in on YouTube?
No, not yet. I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. Okay, back to you, Elena.
Okay, awesome. So let's move into the planning phase. So the first thing you need to do is to choose the right settings on your Zoom account. So I'm going to show you briefly how this is done. You will need to open the Zoom website, sign in into the account of the host, and go to the settings menu here on the left. You will see that there is a very long list of settings that you can choose from. And let's use the waiting room as an example. For example, this one, waiting room activated or deactivated. So if it's blue, it means that it's activated and you will have a waiting room on your meeting. If I click on it, it's not activated anymore. And that means that I won't be using a waiting room on my meeting. So it's just as easy as that. I would recommend that you go over this whole list. And if you want to check in the toolkit, we have explained in detail which are the most important settings that you would need to go over for these types of virtual events. Okay, so it's important to do this before the meeting, right? Because this is kind of like the base on how the meetings will be created. So this is the very, very first step that you need to do on the planning. So once you have the settings ready, you need to schedule the meetings on Zoom. So if you see here at the top, it says schedule a meeting. So I'm going to show you briefly how it's done. If you click on it, Zoom will ask you to enter the details of the meeting that you want to schedule. Okay, so it will ask you for a topic here. Let's just use webinar example. You can add a short description and you have to select the date. So let's host this session this Saturday at 4 p.m. You can set the duration, and it's important to check the time zone. In this case, I'm using Eastern time. Okay, so scroll below, click on save, and you will have your meeting created. So now you can see here what it says, copy invitation. These are the details that you will have to copy and share with participants from the meeting when you invite them. Okay. So let me go back to my PowerPoint now. Okay. So you have the settings right on Zoom. You have scheduled the meeting. Now you need to download and set up the online scoring system. You can do that on your own, or you can count with the help of a data coordinator. And again, please refer to Toolkit section 5A or the webinar 4, where we covered this in detail. Then you will need to create some documents for your event. And I have put here the main ones that, that I usually use. First, I created a database to keep all the details and contact information of all the people involved in the event on a single place where I can check and easily share with my teammates. Then I also create a schedule for the event. And this for me is the main document where I put all the information to share with participants. And that means the times of the events, the pre-event meetings that we're having, the starting order. And if I'm hosting an event with videos, this is where I will put the links for them to access those videos. Then we had a participant handbook, and that is the document that you share with participants for them to know how to set up their devices correctly, the requirements that they need technically, all the protocols and procedures, and basically all the help that you can give to them so that they can prepare to perform their task on the virtual event correctly. And then we also have some graphics to use for, especially for live events. So I know it sounds like a lot of work, but I have good news for you. And that is that on the Toolkit, we have all of these documents, we have templates for them. So you can download those templates from the Toolkit and you can edit them and use them for your own events. So let me show you one example very quickly. Here. You can see this is the schedule template. So what we have here is the most important information, the most important details of the event to add at the beginning. And then we also add the times for the pre-event meetings and the preparation time that we need for checklist. And then basically the starting order of the skaters, whatever information you will need to indicate, depending if you're having events with only elements or full programs and all that. And here's where you can also add the links to the videos. And we also covered at the end a schedule for feedback sessions if you want to have feedback sessions after your event, or if you also want to add trial judging to it. So you can have this, you can find these templates on the Toolkit. And let me show you that we also have a pretty cool set of graphic templates. And if you go to the table of contents in section 6D, you will find this graphics that you can download and edit on your own and use it for your events. Yeah, here in this folder, you will find these and other sorts of graphics that you can edit and use. So we already gave you a head start for this event or virtual events organization. So now you have all the event information ready. You have to share it with participants. So send the information to the skaters. And for this one, it's important to mention that if you are having an event with videos, you will need to include guidelines on how to record those videos. Again, you can find all this information in webinar 5, but you will need to indicate to skaters how to record those videos properly. Otherwise, you will start receiving all sorts of different types of videos, and that will be complicated for you to deal with. And for officials, when you send the information to officials, include the Zoom link and the details for them to join the meeting, include all the documents like the handbook and the schedule and the online scoring system for them to work for their marks. So now that you have everyone ready, you need to host a rehearsal. And I cannot emphasize this enough. This is so, so important to host at least one full rehearsal, as similar as you can do it for the day of the event, because this will help you test your procedures, check that everyone is familiar with them. And basically what you also are doing is you are giving officials the opportunity to put hands on the procedure. It's not enough for them to read the procedure on your documents or to hear me talking about how these things work. They will need to actually do stuff to finally understand how they work. And also for you as a host, it will help you anticipate any kind of issue that might happen. And you would, I mean, believe me, things happen during events. So if you host these rehearsals, you can first anticipate that they will happen, and second, deal with the best way to solve any issue that may happen. So you will like those things to happen during the practice and avoid happening on the day of the event. Okay. And it will also help you improve any procedures. If you realize during the rehearsal that there's any room for improvement, you still have the time to work on it. So after the rehearsal, and if you check everything, you will be ready for the day of the event. But don't forget that if you are streaming this event live for the audience, you will also need to publish or share that streaming link. And you can do that publicly, or you can do it privately. You can do that on a private Facebook group or on a private YouTube link. But don't forget to invite people and share it with your audience. So lastly, like in any event, check and double check that you have everything ready to go. Beth, do we have any questions here before we move on to the execution phase?
This is a combination of a comment and a question to you. So
Okay.
you emphasized on number 7 the importance of having a rehearsal. And I was just thinking back to, some of the things that happened during rehearsal that really emphasized to me, yes, you need to have a rehearsal. And one of them that happened quite often right at the very beginning was people weren't sure how to use breakout rooms. And we would go into a breakout room and then there would be people missing. And so we would have to go hunting for them in virtual hallways to find them and bring them into the proper room. So I guess one thing was, don't assume that people know all these different procedures and things that we've maybe been doing for a year, because not everybody does know them. And so, it's our job to kind of help all our colleagues along, as I saw all year at every event, people helping their colleagues to feel comfortable with doing a virtual event. But I was wondering if you also had any example of maybe a virtual event that you were doing and you had a practice beforehand or a rehearsal, and anything that came up for you.
Well, yeah, a funny one was when actually it was not a rehearsal, it was a real event. And I presented the skater as Spotlight the Ring camera. And instead of a skater, we have a Zamboni there making the eyes. And that lasted for like 5 minutes, which at that time seemed like an eternity, because I didn't know how to cover for that time because we didn't practice having a Zamboni on the ice. So things like that might happen. And I would have liked that to happen during the rehearsal, not the real event. So I agree with you. People getting lost in breakout rooms is so common. It has happened to all of us. And again, as an organizer, you can share all the information with participants, but you won't be 100% sure that they understand all the very tiny details that are behind those procedures unless you host the real thing and make them practice. So yeah.
Okay, good. Now I think Sally mentioned that she has a question coming in from YouTube. Sally?
Yes, I do. Thanks, thanks, Beth. And I love those horror stories. It's enough to scare us all away. Anyway, this comes in from Pili. Is there any limitation on the number of viewers in streaming? Have you ever had overload problems due to a large number of viewers?
No, not the streaming. Of course, it would depend on what hosting site are you using for streaming, but usually something common like YouTube won't give you a limit of viewers. And I have never dealt with overload. I don't know if my events were that popular, but yeah. You do have a limit of participants that you can have on Zoom, but that's a different story because on Zoom you will only have the officials and the organizers team. The audience is on the streaming, so no, I don't think you have a limit for that.
Thanks, Sally. And Elena, we have a comment from Ari, who was gave the presentation on the online scoring. So I'm going to share what she mentioned on the chat. And Ari said, rehearsals are really great to make sure everyone has a Google account and are able to enter their marks into the online scoring. So yeah, you certainly wouldn't want to get to the live event and then find out people didn't even have an account and judge number 4's marks were going to be missing.
Totally. I thank you, Ari, for that one. That's a huge one. Because as a host, having issues like that to deal during the event, it messes up with your schedule. If you have to stop and help an official getting to create a Google account because you didn't know they didn't have one, that means that you will have a huge delay, and then the whole event will go behind schedule. So yeah, and funny story, I once dealt with a judge that did have a Google account, but had forgotten his password. So they couldn't access the scoring system during the event because he couldn't remember his password. So yeah, things like that happen, and it's better for them to happen during the rehearsal. Yeah.
So those are all the questions for now, but we'll be back later with any questions.
Okay, cool. So let's move on to the day of the event. The day of the event has come. What do you do? So first, you start the Zoom meeting with as extra time as you can have, because you will use that time for preparation. And from the host point of view as organizers, here's my checklist. First, you make co-host, you give co-host permissions to your colleague. That's why you have 2 people, like I mentioned, 1 host and 1 co-host to deal with the production behind the scenes. Then make sure you have all the files that you will share open beforehand, because on Zoom, when you start sharing your screen, you need to have the files open first. Otherwise, you won't find them to share. Then you will start admitting participants into the meeting and check in attendance. If you have the streaming live, there is a time for a setup time to deal with. So this is the time to do that, set up the streaming. And then we are using breakout rooms. So preparing breakout rooms also takes a little bit of time. And I'm going to stop here for a while and talk in detail about breakout rooms, because I know there are a big deal about them. So I would recommend that you go and check section 4 of the toolkit, because there I have created a very detailed instructions on how to create and manage breakout rooms. And there's also a link to the Zoom website for explanation. And there's also screen recordings where you can actually see how the whole process looks like and works. But here I'm going to mention the main parts. And is first, you need to know that participants need to be in the meeting for you to be able to assign them to a room. And then when you create the breakout rooms, there are 2 main steps. First, you create the rooms, you rename them, and you assign people. And to assign people, you have 3 options. Manually assigned means that you can choose who goes to which room. You can have open rooms, and that means that participants can choose themselves which rooms they want to access. And the third option is that they automatically assign, and that means that Zoom randomly chooses who goes to which room. Of course, this third option is not recommended for these types of events, because you want the judges in the judges' rooms and the specialists in the technical panel one, but you can use any of the first 2. So once you create the rooms and assign people, there is a second step, and that is to open those rooms. And that is the step that makes those rooms available for participants to access. And it's important to consider that once you open the rooms, you cannot change the number of rooms that you have. So if you open 2 rooms and people go there and start using them, you cannot add 1 more. It has happened to me once that I was hosting a live event, and I created the room for judges and the room for technical panel, and both of them were having their pre-event meetings there. But then in the main room, I welcomed 2 commentators that were joining us for the event. And they asked me to create a third one because they wanted to have a private conversation before the event started. And I couldn't do that because there were judges and official and technical panel having pre-event meetings on those breakout rooms. So have in mind that that's not possible. So my recommendation would be, first, plan ahead of time how many breakout rooms you will need for the entire event. If you're hosting feedback sessions in the end, those also go into private rooms. So try to have that planned and very clearly. And then when you create the rooms, create all of them, all the rooms that you need. And if you want to, you can even add an extra one just in case you need an extra one, and then you will have it available for you. Because once those are open, you cannot change them, and you will need to close and recreate them. And that is a whole new other thing. So those are my recommendations on breakout rooms. Now let's go back to the execution phase. And now that you have the breakout rooms created, officials go there and have their pre-event meetings, just like in any real event, normal event. And then you also need some time for checklist. And that means that you as a host, when you organize an event at the rink, you prepare everything for officials. You know, you prepare the stands, you set up the systems and the copies that they need and everything that they'll need, and you leave that ready for them to come and officiate. But now you cannot go to their homes and do that for them. So you need to assist them beforehand so that you can make sure they have everything ready before the event starts. And I'd recommend to do that with checklists. Those checklists are available in the participant handbook template that I've mentioned earlier. And the way to do this is to ask every single official, what do you see on your screen? Do you have the right spreadsheet from the system? Do you have the right video for this cater? That's the way you can make sure that everyone has everything they need to perform their task and they are ready for the event to start. Okay, so once the event starts, here I'm going to make the distinction between an event with submitted videos and an event with live skating. So for submitted videos, it's pretty easy. It's basically the same procedure that we explained in webinar 3, where we talked about how to host a technical panel practice with videos. The only difference would be that instead of the DIO working on a worksheet, they will enter the elements into the online scoring system, and that will make them available for judges. So what do you have to consider as a host for this type of events? The main thing is make sure the technical panel starts first. That will allow you to have the authorized elements in the system before judges start entering their marks. So you can do this by hosting a different session first and with the technical panel and then with the judges, or you can simply start with them earlier. But then every official will open their videos in their computers, and either referee or controller and on each panel will count down 3, 2, 1, play, and everyone will play the videos and watch them on their own at the same time and enter the corresponding marks and elements into the online scoring system. Okay. So for these types of videos, these are the most frequently asked questions. What happens in the main room? The main room is empty and available because we want to avoid interruptions for each panel. So in case someone gets disconnected, and believe me, that happens more often than I would like to admit, but that happens. So you have the main room available and empty for them to rejoin the meeting, have their cameras and microphones ready, and then access the corresponding breakout room without interrupting any of the panel's work. Can we have observers? And maybe someone in the federation or in the club wants to join the session and see how it looks like. Yes, you can have observers, but you have to consider that if they join the Zoom meeting, the only thing they will see will be officials working. You need to provide them with the videos for them to have the bigger picture, because videos will be played on a different platform. And how do we broadcast this type of event to the audience? Well, I mentioned that you cannot do that directly from Zoom, but if you have some knowledge on broadcasting production, there are ways to prepare something and stream that to the audience. Of course, it takes a different level of knowledge and production, but it can be done differently. So wait, before I go to live events, Beth, do you have any question or can I move on?
Just a couple of questions here. And one is regarding checklists, for the duties of the different panels. Question is, sometimes I've seen the technical controller or referee go through the checklist for their panel. Is that okay?
Sure. I mean, if you have experienced people with virtual events, anyone can do it as long as you make sure that it helps people get ready. Yeah.
Okay. Another question, and you talked about creating an extra room. And is there any downside to creating an extra room? It doesn't cause any other problems besides a positive thing. You have an extra room in case people show up and need a room.
Well, if you manage as a host who goes into each room, that's not a problem at all, because participants will only be able to go to the room you assign them. If you have them open, you might have someone get lost in there, but they can always come back. And that's why it's important to practice that beforehand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess any event I've been on, they've also have the title of the room. It's not just room 1. I mean, they've got a title on them. So if you're on the tech panel, you go to the tech panel room. So yeah. Okay. Exactly. Sally, did you have anything come in?
No, I see one more that came in on your side though.
Yep.
What kind of platform for videos do you use?
Again, you can choose what works for you. We have been using Vimeo or Dropbox for sharing submitted videos. Those were pretty fun. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Those are all the questions for now.
Thank you. So let's see how live events are hosted. So for live events, the main difference is that everything happens in the main room because we have the link connected directly into Zoom. So everyone will need to watch that camera in the main room. And you as a host, you had to set the timing of the event. And that means that you will use graphics as visual cues and spotlight the correct camera for everyone to know what's going on and who's the next skater. Okay, I'm going to show you a real example of this in just a minute. Another thing you will need to consider for live events is if you're having music, if you're having a competition with full programs, I would recommend that you share the music as the host, because sometimes the speakers on the rink are not that good for the camera to pick up that music properly from the camera and share it on Zoom. So doing this is pretty easy. Detailed instructions are in the toolkit, but basically it works the same as if you were like to share your screen. So you click on share, and instead of choosing a screen to share, you choose this icon that you see here. So that will allow you to share only the sound of your computer, and you will be able to play the music for the programs. So you might be wondering, if the skating is live, how do we do replays? And the solution that we find for that one is that we have video replay operators recording their screens during the skating. And when the skater finishes, they share that recording to show the replays. And since everything is connected on the main room, and we usually have a streaming for the audience, and we need to have clean communications, the technical panel uses a separate audio call for private communication, so they can do the calling and nobody's listening to that, and that is private. Okay, so let's see an example. Want to see an example of how this works? I have Keegan Murphy here with us, live from Vancouver, who's going to show us how these things work. So Keegan, are you there?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks for having us. My name is Keegan Murphy. I'm the Director of Programs at the Connaught Skating Club in Richmond, British Columbia, and we're here at the beautiful Richmond Olympic Oval in Vancouver. I have two of my skaters, international competitors here. This is Wesley Chu. He is a Junior Grand Prix competitor and the 2019 Novice Men's Canadian Champion. And Liam Kapaitis is here. Hello. He is a Junior Grand Prix competitor for United States of America and competed at the Youth Olympics. So they're going to do a couple things for you guys, and then you can talk about it after. Okay? So I'll just switch over to the camcorder. Is that good?
Perfect.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Great. So I think they did okay. Yeah. Okay, good job, guys. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you. That was perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
So now we have Chris as our video replay operator.
Thanks, Elena. So I was able to record my screen using the Xbox game capture feature while the skaters were performing. This procedure is outlined in section 5C of the virtual events toolkit. So the file has been saved to my computer and I'm able to share the video with you on this Zoom meeting. So I'm using VLC player and I'm able to play back at regular speed or in slow motion if requested.
So can I request a slow-mo of a landing or a difficult spin position?
Sure, we can watch this landing in slow motion. So let me just change the speed playback. All right.
Yeah, even slower would be great. Thanks. Okay, super.
There we go.
And maybe even a slow-mo of one of the spin positions of your choosing. In case the tech panel needs to count for 2 or discuss whether they all think it's difficult.
No problem.
I imagine, Chris, you practiced this a lot alone before you went to a live event.
Yes, I did, because you've got to remember where the file has been saved to. You've got to remember how to use, depending on what player you're using to play back the video, how to get to slow motion. So it definitely does, you do require practice before you can do this for a live event.
Okay, good to know. Practice is what we've heard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris.
You're welcome, Elena.
It's we wanted to have a real example for you to see how that is not that complex. It's not that difficult. I know that when I talked about it, it sounded like huge, but it's just connecting the camera, having the right people, and having enough practice and preparation. And you can have a virtual event with skaters in real time. Okay, so common questions about this type of event. Why do we use graphics? And why do I mean by graphics? For virtual events that we live stream, we would use things like this. And me as a host, I would share this picture for everyone to see. Like now I'm sharing my PowerPoint, and that would be the visual cue for everyone on the meeting to know that we are ready to move on with the next skater. Okay, so as a host, that is the way to deal with communications, because since everything is happening in real time and you are streaming the session on Zoom live for the audience, it's not that you can use radios like you would do on the rink. So we need to replace communications with something, and we find that visual cues like sharing a picture was the best way to do it. What are the main challenges for this type of event? And for me, the main challenge would be getting the rink disconnected. That can happen, of course. That's why you practice and you prepare everything beforehand. And if that happens, it will only result on the skater having to stop their performance. And once they are reconnected, they would be able to start again from whatever, where the referee indicates them to do this. So yes, it is a challenge, but it doesn't mean that you cannot do that, these types of events because of that. And what are the benefits of doing live events instead of videos? Well, for me, the whole experience of live events feel as what we are used to. You know, everything happens in real time. Skaters are at the rink skating, and we can watch them in real time from our homes, and the audience can watch the streaming. So for everyone involved, officials, skaters, and public, the whole experience is very similar to what we are used to. The only difference is that instead of being all together in the ring, we're connected virtually. So I like that about it. So to wrap up, after the event is finished, there are still some things that the hosts need to do. I know that for most of the people, events finish and that's it, but the host always has some post-event tasks that we need to deal with. So for example, and these are just examples that I brainstormed for you to have an idea, send a feedback survey to participants so that you can have that feedback and improve your future events. Maybe publishing the results on your website, or sharing a highlights video and screenshot as pictures on your social media. Send thank you emails is always a good practice, and you may need to prepare some reports as well. So all those things need to happen after the event, and you should never forget that there's still more work after the event finishes. So Beth, before I go to my last slides, do we have any questions here?
I don't see any on the chat right at this moment. And Sally hasn't said there are any, but I just better double check with Sally before we move on. So Sally?
No, not at this moment. Thanks, Beth.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Elena.
So let's just finish this presentation with some advice for organizers, for hosts of virtual events. So as an event organizer, virtual events require the same planning work as non-virtual events, and you just have to migrate your skills to the virtual format, and that's why we have the toolkit there to help you with that. And as I mentioned at the beginning, you can adapt the event to your needs. I explained how to host a full competition with judges and technical panel and skaters, but you can only host maybe a monitoring session with the camera at the ring and some officials. So use the toolkit and all the pieces that we put together and adapt those instructions to the event that you need. Maybe the difference is that for virtual events, you need a little bit more of practice and rehearsals because it might be something new for all the participants involved, like we said before. And like I also mentioned earlier, you as a host need to help participants understand how things work and prepare their setup at home. So it's your role as the host to offer everything on your side to help officials perform their task and help skaters have the best experience that they can. Okay. So since this is the last webinar of this series, I wanted to finish with some wrap up about the whole series and recommendations for people using this for their own events. So we started with how to host meetings and webinars, and that is the base of the recipe. That's the most basic type of virtual event that you can host. So I would recommend that you start there, host a discussion meeting, host a webinar for your skating community, and then use that to get familiar with the hosting role of using Zoom and using virtual events. Then we also discussed the digital success strategies, and we covered all the main challenges that people face, how to prepare their setups, do I use one computer or two, and all those kinds of things that people face when participating or when hosting virtual events. So with that, you will have more information and more experience to host your own. Then we explained how to host a virtual technical panel practice, and you can add that to have a technical panel on your events virtually. The same goes with the online scoring system. On webinar 4, we explain in detail how this scoring system allowed officials to judge remotely from their homes, either with videos or with live skating. So if you add that, you can host a domestic competition, for example. And in webinar 5, we explain how to record properly skating videos or how to connect their camera at the ring like we had earlier today. So with that one, you will have the whole package, and now you are ready to host the most complex type of virtual events using all these pieces that we put together. And again, you don't have to start right away by hosting a competition with skaters, officials, and different and commentators and different pieces. Start from the basics and then add up all these little things until you are comfortable enough to host a virtual event as complex as what I've shown you today. Okay, so Beth, I know you have lots of experience with virtual events. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I was just kind of making a list of some of the different types of virtual events I'd been involved in, but I didn't want to forget about the, virtual events also that I had seen online that other people had been doing. So I'm going to start listing some of the virtual events that I've been involved in or that I've seen online, and I'm going to invite people to type in the chat some of the virtual events they've either been involved in, this year, or even in past years, because I know this started long before this year. Maybe some that, or you could have seen them yourself online, you weren't involved, but you were watching. And maybe some ideas of the virtual events you can imagine doing going forward, because even in the chat, it wasn't a question, but somebody said, oh, I can see lots of possibilities for virtual events. So we want to see those in the chat. Well, I'm naming off a few, probably with Elena as well. So please add them to the chat, events you have participated in, you've watched virtual events, or possibilities that you can imagine going forward. So I'll start listing some of mine right now as people type in the chat, either on YouTube or on Zoom. So some of the ones I've been involved in, first of all, meetings. I've got these in big bold letters, like meetings. Lots of them. Tech panel webinar, a GOE webinar, a PC webinar, and those were for different countries. So I was here and I was doing a webinar for another country. New judges training, technical panel practice sessions, a spin challenge that included skaters both on and off the ice, team events, friendly match between two clubs or two regions, recertification, qualifying event, club competition, monitoring skaters remotely as a judge, monitoring skaters remotely as a technical official in my own country, and also maybe some other skaters who don't have international officials. Feedback sessions after a competition, a trial judging seminar that included live trial judging, and mentoring new officials. So that's kind of a list. Do you have any others? Either Elena, let's say maybe we could start with you, Elena, or Sally, that you've been involved in?
Yeah, well, that was quite a list. So happy to hear that. Yeah, mainly from my experience, well, where I work in Peru, the ice rink closed. So we have used virtual events to keep our skaters engaged and active with off-ice friendly competitions. Mm-hmm. And we also have feedback sessions with international officials, which for this part of the world is an amazing opportunity that we could have. We also are training new judges and different types of officials virtually with the expertise of international countries more experienced than us. And then the events that we did for the toolkit, you mentioned the spins challenge on and off the ice, and we also had one with different types of elements, step sequence or a jump. And I think that having the officials then giving feedback sessions at the end was one of the main takeaways of those events as well.
Okay, great. And that was added to the list. I forgot about some of the off ice things. So yeah. And Sally, did you have anything to add, or have we stolen all your thunder?
No, my memory is not as good as you two women, but I will say yesterday, the day before yesterday, and the day before that, I was doing 3 competitions with recorded videos. And so, yeah, it's really fun. You get so many opportunities to meet people in places that you wouldn't ordinarily have that chance.
And Elena, I hope I'm not missing anybody, but I just wanted to add some that have gone into chat. So I'm just going to scroll through my chat or the chat and list some. So I'm sorry if I missed anyone. Elena or Sally can jump in if they see one I've missed. So from Karen Archer, Karen's done training camps and a feedback type of event. Somebody said, wow, the list is endless. Sadie said spin events on and off the ice. There's going to be a selection event where they're going to be choosing, this is from Jeroen, that they're going to be choosing different skaters in order to go to Nebelhorn. Minimum points event for Worlds, virtual event ISU in singles and dance. Sadie mentioned feedback sessions. Let's see, Jeroen said he's done a lot of events or several events as TC and a judge, monitoring, selection for Worlds, technical panel recertification. Chris Buchanan said GOE seminars, component seminars, judge training, monitoring, training for skaters. Here's an interesting one on regulations. Yeah, we've definitely done that, and rules, interruption rules, etc. Training for parents. On IJS. Lone said national seminar for tech panel with foreign moderator. Let's see, we've got here, they did a session in Slovenia last year. There was live streaming when the competition with judging was running. A test event with live judging with 20 participants by Lone. Janice Hunter says live competitions, video performance competition, spin competition, technical panel practice session, judges feedback session, skater assessments, and she added, and many meetings. A virtual competition in Peru. That was Aniela from Poland who did the virtual event in Peru. Selection for Worlds. And yes, new rule kind of seminar. All right. Whoa, we have had a busy year. We've been at our houses, but we may have been busier than we've been going to different events. So yeah, everyone's been very involved this year in virtual events. So those are the ones I have right now. Sally, did you see any more listed?
No, but it's absolutely astonishing what everybody has done. And I love this ability to come and share that, and I'm looking at some of these things and I never thought of that. Of course you could do that. Of course, yeah. And the number of regions that people have worked in. So Aniela has come on and said, virtual competition in Peru. Well, when would we have had a chance to judge something in Peru? So again, I love the reach of the online world.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for that, Sally. And Elena, unless you have anything more, I'm just gonna do our closing and wrap things up for today.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to add that we had a summary of all the things that we have done during this past year, but I would like to have one of the whole things that we wanted to keep doing, even post-pandemic. I mean, what we have discovered with these virtual tools is that they bring us closer, and we don't need to have a restriction not being able to travel to use them. So from my end, I know that I will keep hosting virtual events, even if I don't have the actual need to, because there is a pandemic, but because it brings so many benefits to the skaters and to the skating community. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, so we're definitely not going to be replacing live events with anything in the toolkit, but enhancing what we already have with new opportunities and meeting people in different places and helping officials grow and skaters grow worldwide. So yeah, that's certainly something that it's shown us this past year. So in closing, I would like to thank Keegan Murphy, Liam Kapakis, and Wesley Chu for joining us today live from Vancouver. Elena, I want to thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience of how to host virtual events with us, not only today, but during this past year. Elena has gotten so many emails from me. How do you do this? How do you do this? And she has graciously helped me grow as well. And we can't thank you enough, not only for your knowledge, but also your passion and vision to help move us forward. So now I would like to thank or bring in Sally Rohorek. I could also thank her for everything that she's done during this whole year, but I'd like to bring in Sally, who's a member of the e-learning group, to say a few words. So Sally?
Thanks, Beth. And I know this sounds repetitive, but I can't help but say again what we've known for a while, but now we're able to articulate. Because this was a project, the whole Toolkit project was not a top-down idea. Nobody said to this group of people, can you please develop this? It was created by a group of people who said, why can't we start something online? There must be a way to do this. And it started from the ground up, and people pitching in and saying, I can do this and I can do that, and why don't we try that? And it gradually grew and grew and grew. And when we see the number of events that you have collectively participated in, and in so many locations, I really do realize just how powerful the internet can be in bringing us all together to do what we love to do. And of course, it all started, as we've just said, because of the world situation that closed so many of our rinks and a few people getting together. I think that we'd all agree now that virtual events, as you've just said, Beth and Elena, do not replace in-person competitions or seminars. However, they will continue because they complement these in-person events. They reach places in the whole skating world and bring people together with activities that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And we know that because of who's here and participating in this very thing here. And that is not just countries that we might not be able to visit, but it's also in places that are large, like Canada or other places. We do a lot of virtual events here in British Columbia because there are smaller clubs all over the place that are 1,000, 1,500 kilometers away. And the way we reach them now is ongoing events like this. So you've already met some of the Toolkit developers. If you've been at all 6 of the webinars, you will have heard their materials. But I would like to just name them again to thank them all for not only the webinars, but for creating that toolkit and for monitoring it and watching it and keeping it up to date and offering their services to help you out doing your own events. So these would be, of course, Beth Crane, who's our executive director, Elena Iñiguez de Heredia, who does everything, is a magic project manager, Sandra Williamson-Ledley in New Zealand, who is the one who designed the website, who gave the webinar on how to give clear presentations. She designed our toolkit and then made it so that the subject matter people could put their own materials in that, with the help of Elizabeth Donnelly, the e-learning coordinator from the ISU, thanks to Elizabeth. Ariadna Morones Negrete, who has created this amazing online scoring system that is being used, I think, almost on a daily basis, if not more often. Luca De Mate, who did the session and the toolkit section on how to do video recordings. And Chris Stokes, who handled all of this stuff of the video replay operator and how do you make that all work when you're actually on the front lines. And that area has grown substantially since Chris first started it. So thank you very much for that. And I'd like to thank the ISU e-learning project group, of which I am a part. And it itself is part of the development commission of the ISU, chaired by Susanna Racamo. Susanna is the sort of person who sees possibilities, and she opens doors for things to happen. I know she's been here today watching some of it, and I can't thank you too much, Susanna, for your foresight and your trust in the expertise of these people who've put it together. Look what has been created that will continue from here on. So what will happen from here on? What's going to happen moving forward? Well, after today's event, you'll get the usual survey to fill out. And we'd really appreciate if you could focus on how we can continue to help you. So the people are here, the materials are here, the webinars are here. We know some of you are already asking, are these webinars going to stay online? Yes, they will. They'll be on the development, the ISU development area YouTube channel. So you'll be able to use them again. Of course, the toolkit itself is there. But we know that you want to do some of your own events, maybe with a helping hand. Let us know, and please do that on the survey when you get it after the event today. That would help us a lot to plan for the future and to keep this alive and running. So thank you very much, and back over to you, Beth.
All right, thank you, Sally. I would like to thank everyone for joining us for the Toolkit webinar series. It has been so wonderful to be able to see so many people from around the skating world online. And we've certainly learned a lot of new skills from people throughout this year that have helped us with the toolkit and develop it. And as Sally says, if you've got some suggestions or ways that we can help you going forward, please let us know. We're always interested to hear what you have to say and learning new things from you, even as we did today, new possibilities of what we could be doing virtually. So we'd like to thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in a rink or online very soon. So bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.